Hey, today I'm going to make a video that is going to be contentious. It's also going to be in English. Va a ser un video en inglés porque la temática del video es más para la comunidad de los Estados Unidos. Today's topic is what is up with the Isese practitioners in the USA. Now I'm going to make this disclaimer starting out. I know this is going to ruffle feathers. Let me be open and transparent from the beginning. I am a Lukumi initiated Babalao. My training is Lukumi training. I have done extensive studying and reading of Isese documentation, historical documents, anthropology, theology, so I would probably be better versed than most Lukumi Babalaos are about Isese or Essene Ibile or West African Indigenous African Ifa, whichever terminology you want to use. So I do know enough not to be fooled, but I am not trained in Nigeria. And that's the point of this video. There is a huge crisis. This video is a call to action to people who are on the Isese side, because we Lukumi have to be cleaning up after this. I've been seeing a whole bunch of videos recently of Afro-American. There's a big crisis of this. And I'm going to put it, I'm not even going to mince words. I'm going to label it as it is. African-American, mostly African-American, though there are some stragglers, some Latino and whites as well. African-American Isese cosplaying. For those who don't know the terminology of cosplaying, it's a term very, very popularized in the United States, probably Canada too, maybe even Europe. It means costume playing. Cosplaying, costume playing. We have a crisis. We have a crisis in Miami. We have a crisis in New York. We have a crisis in Brazil. We have a crisis, oh boy, do we have a crisis in Mexico and in Venezuela. We have a crisis of Isese cosplaying. And let me define that for you. Isese cosplaying is people who like to dress up in the costumes, who have Nigerian Iroke, who have a Nigerian Irukere, who have a Nigerian Agere Ifa, who have Nigerian Ifa trays, who no longer use coconut okweles. Now we're going to use, opele seed okweles, or, ¿cómo se llama eso? Ay Dios, I'm trying to remember it now. Acere or apere? Can't remember the seed. It'll come to me. One of those seed ekweles. They no longer will use a hikara. Now they're going to use their agerifa to put everything. I mean, because they cannot match the training, because they don't know Yoruba, they don't know the Yoruba language, they make up for the lack of everything that is substantive of a particular religious practice with cosplaying. This is particularly found in all these major cities I mentioned. Mexico City, Caracas, San Juan, Puerto Rico to a smaller extent. La Habana has some. Miami, New York, and other places. We have this crisis of people who are self-delegating themselves, who are self-identifying. I'm deciding to be traditional. I just decided. I'm going to be traditional. I don't even know what that means. As if Lukumi traditions are not traditional. Because Adechina, Mamon Serrat, all these people, they came out of Mars. They weren't following a tradition. They didn't arrive in Cuba in 1830, over 200 years ago. That's not enough longevity for it to be tradition. But let's put the terminology argument aside for a second, even though we can have it. So we have these people who initiate, most of them initiate Lukumi if they have an initiation. They can't cut it. They can't learn the Iyuba, Moyuba as we call it in the Lukumi tradition. They can't learn basic prayers like El Ochebile for, the use of Obi Agbon or Agbon. They can't learn the prayer of the Rwani Moso to be able to light candles for our tradition. They don't know the chants to sacrifice. They don't know the chants for honey. They don't know a chants for Epo Malero. They don't know the chants for Efun. Okay? They don't know how to do the Ebo ritual upon the Ifa trait of our lineage, which could be many, but most people do the Febles, the Ebo Miguel Febles. Some do the Tatayetan one, some do the Guillermo Castro one, some even do the Bernardo Roja one, and there's others. So they don't have any training. They don't even know how to use Equele, Afro-Cuban style, meaning Lucumista. They don't know any substantive information from Oduifa in the Afro-Cuban corpus. And I'm talking about purely about Babalaos. If we went to the Olorisha side, it's even worse. They wouldn't be able to label one single plant. You couldn't be able to say, what type of plant is this? You could show them a prodigiosa, siempre viva in their face. No. You could show them una hoja esta púrpura, cucaracha. No. You could show them, ¿cómo se dice? Ehueto modé, el palito. No. They wouldn't know any basic plants. La yagruma, que era como si fuera una estrella. They don't know. They wouldn't be able to know one chant, even just one basic chant of Osain. Teteregun eweo dara, tetegerun eweo Osain, kebo, 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 kebo. Or a tipon la ifaduru, a tipon la ifaduru. O yiki yiki otalo mío, o yiki yiki otalo mío. Moyun ewe mosarao, moyun ewe mosarao. Something, okay? Some basic training. We all have some studying to do. I have a lot of studying in the Lukumi to do. I still have a lot to do. But I know my basic rituals. It's been 12 years already. So these people can't cut it. They decide that, that's it. I'm declaring myself an Afro-traditional or African traditional Isese or Esingibile. And then they don't get any training. And this is where the crisis comes in. For those that don't know, if you're going to initiate Esinibile or Isese, you need to find a lineage. You need to go to Nigeria. You need to go to Africa. It's not, no, I did it in Mexico City and that's it. That's not enough. You are risking that your initiations are not done well, because most people in the West are not well trained to do these type of initiations. And if by luck you fell in the hands of somebody like Jose Rodriguez Agbola, if by luck you fell into the hands of somebody like Ember Arbelay, if by luck you fell into the hands of Mike Figueredo, if by luck you fell into at least some of these people I've mentioned who seem to have at least the basic training to be able to do a proper Itefa, a proper initiation into Ifa, or a proper Idoshu, a proper alignment of your Ori with your Orisha Alagbatori. If you were lucky enough to fall into their hands, there is still no guarantee, and I'm sorry that they're going to hate me for this statement, that you're going to get the proper training and knowledge from these people I've mentioned, because maybe they don't know it. They would have to recommend you upwards to an actual Nigerian who would be able to train you in the needs and rituals of your lineage. You need to learn Etutu. You need to learn Ipese. You need to learn Akunlebo. You need to learn Adifafung or Dafa, as they call it. I'm using terminology from the Nigerian side. For one day, I'm putting away que si el ebo pongifa, ebo tablero, eboate, bocatero, osode, all that terminology, Lukumi, I'm putting aside. I'm using Nigerian terminology for today. They need to learn how to do the Oshefa. You need to learn how to cast Obiabata, Obiorogbo as well for Chango and for other deities. I think I got you probably as well. You need to do this. This is not optional. And if you're going to learn the Ifa Isese way, you can't be doing divination the Cuban style. You can't be using the way we mark our prophecy or our prophetic sentences. You got to be throwing the chain, ask Ebo or Ebo Adimu, Ebo Akoru or Ebo Sisa. You got to know your way of discovering this. And you need to learn what are the Akoche. Here's the important part. Here's where everybody sink or swim. And I always tell everybody, if you really want to know if somebody is for real and he says Ifa, if you really want to double check if somebody is not lying to you, and forgive me, I have allergies, so today my eyes are itchy. You need to ask them two questions. And these are the two questions where pretty much 99% to 100% of every priest I've ever met in the West chokes and falls apart. regardless of race. White, Asian, black, Latino. Question number 1. And I'm so tired of wasting around time and playing diddly-dallying around it, because I'm a guy that likes to be clear. Question number 1. Have you trained 7 minimum years, 365 days, every single day as an akapo, as an omoawo, or bababaifa in Nigeria? Yes or no? There is no middle answers. There is no alternative training. I don't care how much you've met through Zoom. I don't care how much camera work and time you put in GoToMeeting. I don't care if you train 5 hours every single day, which no Western Occidental does, with a babaifa on camera, practicing whatever it is that you're going to be practicing. Your boriru, your itutu, your ipesea con leboy, or biabata, or cheifa, how to do a dafa, preparation of medicine, ako cheifa, okay? Or foche, and all the other stuff, all the training that it goes to. And this is the basics. This is basics. I'm pretty sure that me as a Westerner don't know the advanced Ifa studies on their side. I'm talking about what we see on books and things that are available for some practitioners who've gotten access to. Question number 1 again, in case you didn't hear it. How many years, or have you trained in 7 years minimum, 365 days, physically, living in Nigeria with a babaifa as an akapo and an omowo of them? Yes or no? Extra sub questions. How much training did you get to learn how to do dafa? How many readings did you perform to other people where all you were was just a robot? You cast the chain and you shut the hell up. Let me say that again. You cast the opele and you shut the hell up. Because you're not talking. You don't know jack shit. You don't know jack squat. Today, voy a hablar claro. You don't know jack squat. No, your Baba Ifa is going to speak Adifafun. Your Baba Ifa is going to recite verses. You don't know nothing. All you know is that Ifa said Obedi. And you don't know a single verse of Obedi. You don't know a single phrase. You don't even know one single stanza. The only thing you know about Obedi, if you're competent enough, is your Lukumi pray. Obedi, Obedi, O Cancan, Obedi, Olere, Adifa Shoka Boniregun, Obedi, O Cancan, Obedi, Olele, Adifa Fung, Aburotite, and so on. Because that's the official one. All right? And the chant is Obedi Cancan, Obedi Lele, Obedi Lele, Obedi, O Cancan. That's standard Afro-Cuban Eshe Fa Keke, small Ifa prayer. Eshe Fa Keke that we use to activate our Odu Ifa. That's valid for us. You can activate Obedi in any ritual in the Afro-Cuban tradition with what I just said. But that is not valid for Isese. How could you speak Obedi? I could talk Obedi. I could. El camuflaje, la sabiduría está repartida en el mundo. You know, camouflage, wisdom is distributed around the world. For people who are Obedi, sometimes they've had a trauma in their life, and you have to be very careful to make sure that they don't repeat the trauma with other people, and so on and so on and so forth. There's other topics we can discuss. Why? Because in the Afro-Cuban Lukumi tradition, we talk on the basis of Itan narratives, what we call them pataquines, or refrane. Creo que one of the refrains is La flecha tiene la virtud de no hacer sonido. The arrow has the virtue of being silent. Okay? That's a refrain. That's an official refrain of our sign, of our Lukumi corpus. But guess what? This guy right here, who's a 12 years in Ifa, almost 13 now, Omo Odu, I have Odu, I have the highest rank in my Lukumi tradition. I don't know jack squat about Isese Ifa verses. And I'm saying this on camera. The only verse I know is one from Obeate. Obeate kotonile kerenigele adifafun oluaye abufun shebaurun eite bayo shebaurun yogba. And Etsuyere and Iyere of the Obeate tradition, of the Nigerian tradition, which has to do with Odu. Eserewa ewawo omo odu werere, which is the one I use in my own prayers because I like it, because I incorporate it. That's it. I don't know any other Obeate memorized prayers. And I don't know, I can't recite a whole bunch of stanzas. I can't interpret because it's not my language. Because I'm honest enough to know that I'm 44, that I don't got the time to go learn a foreign language. that I'm not going to get really good. I'm not going to become a native speaker, like, for example, somebody like Mike Figueredo, or even, God forbid, having to say the name of this guy who is a fraud himself, who is, I don't want to say what he is, but he's somebody who doesn't have the qualities to be initiated in Ifa because of his physical conditions. Let's put it that way, Nathan Lugo. But I will give him credit. Nathan Lugo is a Puerto Rican. He's from my country. And he went to Nigeria, and I don't know how many years he spent there, but I'm assuming it was enough that he learned their language so well that he's a linguistic expert. He can be a professor, a college-level professor. So that's the only credit I'm going to give Nathan Lugo ever in my life, because everything else about him is a fraud. But he knows what he's talking about. Well, at least he knows how to speak the language. But I still have not met anybody in the West that has spent at least 7 years with your Baba Ifa over there. Nathan probably spent more than most people, which gives him a little more pedigree to speak about certain subjects. But I still think that he doesn't know what he's talking about fully. He knows enough to be able to counteract me because he knows more living over there. But I don't think he's properly trained. And if Nathan, who is probably the guy in the West with the most knowledge that I've ever met, that I've seen online, still doesn't have the pedigree, what about all these other frauds? All of these people, all these Aborení initiates in Mexico, and I'm sorry I have to label this because this is what comes to mind. All these people in Mexico just initiated, no porque me, but some Mexican initiated, another Mexican initiated, another Mexican who initiated fourth category, fourth generation Aborení Mexican. You're like, does anybody here know what the heck they're doing? Everybody got their own tribe, everybody got their own gang of people initiating supuestamente, and at the top of that little gang of 4 generations, there's one guy who spent a week in Nigeria, got initiated, came back to Mexico, and decided he was going to initiate a whole bunch of other people. And this is happening with the knowledge of the Nigerian elders too. I'm not letting the Nigerian elders off the hook. Because Nigerian elders know that they initiate Westerners. They know these people will not come back to get training. They let them off and they take their money and that's it. They have absolutely no contribution, no commitment. No commitment to the fact that they're creating a large pool of nothing Isese cosplayers. How many more Westerners have to keep going to Nigeria, spend a week there, take a lot of beautiful photos with African attire, feel like they've come back to Africa? Whee! They get the little tourism, the little Afro-cultural tourism, right? And then they come back. And how many of them have actually completed their training? I'm so confident of this. I know that there are some Afro-Cubans, some Miami people who have learned some verses, who have done some training, but even the best among them is not good enough. Second question, important. How many verses of Ifa do you know per Odu? P-E-R-O-D-U. Per Odu. Multiply 256 times the minimum that you're supposed to learn. Most lineages, anywhere from 3 to 5 verses. Per, P-E-R-O-D-O. Not just 3, 5 total. Per Odu. 256. Let's do the math right now because I don't have it here. It's probably like 1,000 something. Let's put 5, okay? 256. I'm calculating it right now on the computer. 1,280 verses memorized, okay? That's if you had 5. Let's do 3. Okay, I'm going to be generous with you, Isese cosplayers. 768 verses. Minimum. You need to know the verse. 768 verses. And each verse may have anywhere from 6 to 20 stanzas. So that means multiply 768 times, let's put the average of 12 stanzas, right? I'm going to be nice with you guys. Average 12 stanzas. 12 stanzas. Okay. That means you got to learn 9,216 stanzas. Okay? Let's divide that again by 12 so we can get the verses. That's 768 verses. You have to memorize it with perfect Yoruba pronunciation. You gotta know every stanza perfectly, and you gotta learn the song that your lineage used to sing that song. It can't just be, you can't sing somewhere over the rainbow while singing that melody over your adifafung. No, you need to know the chanting songs, the iyere of your lineage, if you're really going to be a Isese Esim Ibile practitioner. But here's the kicker. You also need to learn 768 itan. And it's not just making it up. You are taught the itan. You are taught the story that is associated with that. You need to recite the verse and then recite the itan the same way that is recited in your lineage. Okay? We're not done. Here's another kicker. Once you've memorized the story that you need to relate after you recite the verse, you need to recite and know the ebosisa, the detailed ebo of the story. If the story is solved, the person solves the problems with 2 hands, 2 igbin, two shells or whatever, snails, and 1 red cloth, asho pupua. Okay? You need to memorize that verse such and such of this such and such odu. When that verse is recited and that's the person's problem, you will solve it with 2 hands. You know, adie meji, igbi meji, ati, ashopupua. So you need to memorize 768 eboses in your head, not written down, memorized. And this is minimum. We're still not done. We're still not done. Many of these verses, a good majority of them, have akoshe, have a particular medicine that has to be done. Meaning, on top of doing the adie meji, ati igbi meji, ati ashopupua, okan, you need to mark the sign, ogbedi, and a little tray, and you need to recite that same verse, and you need to do something with that powder. Whatever it has to be done. Maybe you have to drink it. Maybe you have to pass it through your head. Maybe it needs to be mixed with the ashopupua. Maybe you need to mix it in with oshe dundung and give a soap bath. That is also taught. Because if you don't do the akoche, the problem is not resolved either as efficiently as it should be, or it's not resolved. So you don't do your job as a professional, as an Ifa professional. So let me repeat that. You need to learn 768 minimum verses, 768 minimum itan, 768 minimum ebo sisa, and 668 minimum akoshe. Or maybe a little less if some of them don't have akoshe, because some of the verses don't have akoshe. And this, ladies and gentlemen, makes you the most minimum qualified Ifa professional, because you're also taught that if you recite those 3 prayers and you don't know it and you can't solve the problem, you need to move the person to another priest. You need to call your Baba Ifa. You need to call your trainers. You need to call your lineage and say, yo, the Obedi came out. I talked to him about the zorro. I talked to him about the bird. And I talked to him about the snake. That's not his problems. His problem wasn't a health issue. It wasn't a marriage issue. And it wasn't a money issue. Maybe the person's problem was they were afflicted by Oguburuku, or what the Nigerians called Ogububuru. And maybe that was their problem. And you don't know the verse. But your elder goes, oh, Obedi, there's a story there about such and such, such and such. It's about Ogur. Ask Ifa if that's the verse and that's the Ebosisa that has to be done. And you solved the problem. Congratulations. You handled the matter like a professional. Congratulations. But this is only when you know 768 verses with their Ebo, Itan, and Arcoche. And guess what? Here's where I'm going to relate something to most of the audience who is Lukumi watchers and people who are Isese Afro-American watching. I haven't met one single priest in all of the United States. I haven't met a single priest in all of Mexico. I haven't met a single priest in all of Brazil. I haven't met a single priest born over here that speaks perfect Yoruba, has been to Nigeria and practiced and lived there with their elders for 7 years, 365 days, and trained with them step by step and taken their examen. I'm going to even look for the term, okay? Because this was posted the other day by a friend of mine. Jose Arbola posted a great post about it, okay? Let me see if I can get that post, because I know I posted it. And nobody in the USA that I've ever met, Mexico, Venezuela, all these places that have big burgeoning communities of, I'm Isese, I'm a believer, I'm a priest. No, I don't believe in that crappy Lukumi stuff. I believe Isese because I'm traditional. None of these traditional guys have done any traditional training. They've never traditionally trained over there. They've never undertaken the traditional way of learning. They've never traditionally submitted themselves to a traditional Baba Ifa. There's nothing traditional about them except the clothing and the iroke that they shake. It's a bullshit. It's a fraud. And we need to start calling it a bullshit and a fraud because we have a big crisis of bullshit and fraud happening in the West with respect to Isese Ifa. And I don't hear enough voices screaming out of it. I applaud publicly Jose Agbola, Jose Rodriguez, amigo mío. I'm going to be going to Nigeria with him probably in May. He invited me. Great. I want to do that. I love cultural trips. I want to be able to see what's going on over there. It's always interesting. And I hope he doesn't get angry with me because I'm not labeling him as a person's problem. He's very peaceful. He's very educated. He's very iwapele. He's very omoluabi. Yeah, I've been reading your books, guys. All of this, I give him that. But he posted the other day something. And we have a big crisis of this. He said the steps for training, right? That you needed to learn how to prepare atese, akose, afoshe, and all the eshifat, etc. And he said the important thing. Listen up. In the last step, this is where the Omo Awo, the student, goes through their graduation called Ayeye Aseyori Awo. So I want to ask all of these guys in Venezuela, in Brazil, in Miami, in Mexico, in La Habana, all these Bonillo, all these no, que si yo, que si ka, que si ku, que si ki. Mira. I want to ask all of you guys, how many of you guys trained 7 years, a minimum with your Baba Ifa in Nigeria, 365 days? How many of you guys speak 3 to 5 verses memorized with the Eboy Tana Koche? And how many of you guys went through the Ayeye Aseyori Awo? How many? I don't know any. I want people to name me one person or to come to my page and say, no, I went through it. I went to the Ayeye Aseyori Awo. See, de verdad, I would like to publicly challenge any Western Ifa priest that wants to step up and say, yo doy la talla, René. I'm going to humiliate you. I'm willing to take that. No hay problema. I want that person just left that hand up and said, that's me. I'm the guy you're talking about. Oh, okay, good. I want to put random prayers. I'm going to say random Odu. I want you to first recite 3 verses from each one of the Odus. I'm going to do at least 5 different Odus, randomly selected. And I want you to recite 3 different prayers from each of them. So that's going to be a total of 15 prayers. Shouldn't take that long. 20-minute thing should do it. And then I want you to bring, because I don't know it, but I want to be able to have some kind of way to prove it. Once you're done reciting, at the moment you close your eyes, you're going to close your eyes like this, so you're not reading anything, right? And you're reciting, blah, 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 blah. And then after the 15 prayers are recited from different Odus, you're going to send me the papers with the Odus clearly listed and the prayers clearly listed and the Ebo, all of that, all clearly listed, so I can verify, or even give me the information of your Baba Ifa. So I can talk with them and say, is this true? These 3 verses are in that Odu? Are these 3 verses in that Odu? Is this the Ebo Sisa of that sign? Is this the Akoche? Did this guy recite the Itan correctly to me? Because I want to confirm this. I've thrown out this challenge a whole bunch of times in Facebook, and nobody's paying attention, so I'm throwing it out through my YouTube and my video. Because I'm challenging most, if not every single Isese Ifa priest. Not because I want to show off. I don't know as much as you guys in Isese. I don't. Mira, bien poquito. And the few friends that I have teach me a few things. And even with my own Lukubi tradition, I'm pretty good at what I do, but I am not the world's best. I'm learning just like anybody. But we have a crisis. This is why I'm making this video. We have a crisis. In Philadelphia these days, we had this man. I'm not even going to name his name because I'm not going to get involved in putting myself in trouble. But we have this man that has been pretending to be an Isese priest. He's a fraud. He's not Lukumi. He's also not Isese. He's a complete fraud. But this man is endemic. It's a symbol of this problem that we have in the Ifa tradition today in the West. And it's because we have so many Nigerian and also Nigerian trained Occidentals initiating people in Itefa. and nobody trains and nobody knows anything. But they do know how to wear African clothes. But boy, do they know how to hold an iroke. They know how to clean themselves when they're educating and show off in pictures like this. But they don't know how to recite because it's hard, because it's practically impossible. And I think it's necessary for people in the West to actually speak honestly about this. It's impossible for most people in the West to just drop everything that they're doing, drop their lives, drop their wives, drop their children, and go over to Nigeria to learn a language that is spoken by what, 42 million people in the world? An indigenous language over there, because it's an indigenous language of a people that most countries in the world don't even communicate or talk with. Because Yoruba is not a language that anybody's talking about. So they have to go, we have to, from the West, from Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, go over there, learn for 7 minimum years, and that's not enough, that's minimal. In reality, a good professional priest should learn about 15 years or more with their Baba father. And if they want to be a real respectable Babalao, like Juan de Abimbola talks about in his book, Ifa Exposition of Literary Corpus, he says that a Babalao, or at least in Nigeria, the standard was 16 verses. 16! With their boy Tanikoche, per Odu. A Westerner is never going to learn 16 prayers. And will never learn it. Menos de 25, 30 years, impossible. That means that if you start at 20 years of age, by 50 or 55, if you're very diligent and you're really the one and only magical Occidental that learned the language, you'll learn how to do this. I'm willing even to bet 100 pesos. I'm willing to give it to him if he wants to take that challenge. I'm willing to even challenge Nathan Lugar Ogunda Kete, ay kulola, that he can recite to me 5 verses per Odu. He does not know 5 verses per Odu. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know 3 verses per Odu tampoco. I'm pretty sure about it. Memorized, stanza by stanza, ebo by ebo, akoche by akoche. 768 verses? Nah. Can he speak Yoruba? Yeah, but he doesn't have that. He doesn't have 3 verses. And he's been over there supuestamente 15 years, training with Fakayo Defaniji and Oshogmola. So we have a crisis of BS. I respect Babalaos of the Isese tradition. I'm going to end with this. I have a lot of good friends who discuss things with me on private all the time. I respect their training. I respect the difficulty of what they're doing. I respect that they're embarking on a training regimen that is practically impossible, that I'm not going to do in this lifetime. So on eso, respect. Honest respect. But we have a crisis here that you guys got to clean up. It's you guys. It's not the local me. We have a crisis of people thinking that you can initiate an itefa and then say, I'm good enough. I have one prayer. And that's how you consult people. And everybody keeps quiet. Nobody talks about this. It's the dirty little secret in Nigeria. It's part of the cultural tradition that, the guy next door could be homosexual, but I'm not going to say nothing about it. I'm just going to sweep it under the rug. Let's put that. That's the rug right here. Let's lift it up and put it down. And nobody talks about anything. Nobody asks anything. There is no credentials being asked about. And nobody ever goes out and says, oye, carajo es esto, mano? What the hell is going on here? Did any of you guys know your training? You claim all this. Oh, you got to be this way. You got to pray this. You got to do this. Lo comí porquería. You guys have, you don't know what you're speaking. Your prayers have no translation. You don't know what to do it. But you guys don't know 3 prayers. You guys don't know how to speak Yoruba perfectly. You guys don't have 3 prayers with your boy Tanikoche. You never went to Nigeria and trained there for at least 7 years. Even some of the elders, I don't want to name names, but some of the elders that I talk to right now, who are the ones that are on the web fighting the good fight, trying to push Isese over Lukumi, even those Westerners, they don't got the goods. So this is bullshit. Ain't none of you guys went to the Ayaya Seyoriawo. None of you guys have 3 verses per Odu. Much less professional level, which for a lot of lineages is at least 8 verses, 8 to 16 verses. You have basic level, less than basic level. One of the priests I most respect, Ordejimi, who lives in Cuba, he himself has said, brother, I don't have 1 verse per Odu. He has almost near to 1 verse per Odu. And I got to applaud that, because I can't even imagine having 200 verses, and being a Cuban man who speaks Spanish, because he doesn't speak English, he speaks Spanish, and he's been trained, and his pronunciation is quite good. I've heard him recite. Mi aplauso por de Jimmy. I'm talking about real babalaos here. Mi aplauso por de Jimmy. And I applaud his training, and I hope he gets to his goals. But even Odejimi, which is one of the most amazing guys that I know, one of the most seriously students of his lineage that I know on the web, that I talk to, not even Odejimi has 256 verses. He doesn't have at least one verse per Odu. There's some Odus that he says, I don't have the verse. I don't have it memorized. I can't pronounce it. I have never asked him, do you know the Eboy Akoche of all of these verses you're talking about? He might have them memorized, but he doesn't have the Ebo and the Akoche memorized. He might have the verse memorized. So since I know what's out there, since I've tested the waters and know who's good and who's bullshitting, I ask publicly, is there a Babalao in the West? A Western-born Canadian, USA, Mexican, Venezuelan, Puerto Rican, Panamanian, Cuban, Dominican, Chilean, Peruvian, Colombian, anybody from the West that actually has the goods? And if the answer is no, which is what I suspect, highly suspect, then what we got here is just one fake tradition all in the Occident. A whole bunch of people who initiated and they don't know what they're doing. And this also is a problem in the Lukumi. Don't think I'm going to put my finger off to the Lukumi for a second. Because if we look in the Lukumi or Orisha side in particular, all they know how to do is poner el trono, dress in clothing, put their 5 or 6 collares encima, and show up to a Wemilere. And that's it. That's their extent of their Orisha knowledge. They can't even do la moyubita esa de quincamache, quincamache, quincamache. Let alone understand what they're saying. Let alone have an idea, at least, because I'm not perfect, but I have an idea. If I tell you what you say, what is it? But we're doing reverence to all the spirits that are in heaven or the babalaos, and I can at least give you a general close idea to what's being said. Some training. I'm not putting myself as the best guy. If I'm doing this critique publicly, I'm putting myself on the block and saying we all have some training we have to do. But one thing I don't do is go around saying I'm an Isese priest. The Lukumi standards are different. Lukumi consider you professional as long as you know certain basic things. Aselebo, do your moyuba, throw your obi casting, know your Owani Hermoso prayer, and at least know 3 topics per verse. Topics, not verses, topics. At least say 3 things about each Odu. And you're supposed to improve and get better. The more stories you know, the better professional you are. And when you don't know something, you also got to call an elder. Oh, yeah, said it. This Odu, Odimoni came out. I don't know what to talk to this person about. Did you talk to him about this? Did you talk to him about that? Did you tell him about the situation where he's going to be envied by a family members? Yeah? Oh, okay. That's one topic, okay? Did you tell him about the person being tired and sitting down to reflect upon life? Odimoni? Oh, okay. That's 2 topics. You have to have at least 3. And right now, my memory is failing me. That's the Lukumi standard. But Isese standards are way harder. And that's up on them. That's not up to me to decide. I've already done other videos in Spanish where I argue that Isese training standards through rote memorization of a language that Westerners don't speak about is anachronistic. I've already made that argument in another video. Look it up on my YouTube if you want to find it. But this video is straight for the Isese community, particularly in the West. You have a crisis of legitimacy on your hands, folks. We have a lot of people playing cosplaying, costume playing. We have a lot of Afro-American people who desire to